I'm Suzanne, the Marketing and Sales Director at EdgeWorks, an engineering firm specializing in hazardous locations and area classification training, software, and consulting services. Our company is a leading expert nationally in hazardous locations. To demonstrate just one facet of the expertise we can offer you, our valued client, we are about to interview a special guest, a HAZLOC engineer at EdgeWorks, Doug Brooks. Doug has devised and formulated an equation that enhances area classification practice in engineering. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for having me.
Well, Doug, you've had a long and varied career, starting with your career in the military and culminating in your role as a principal engineer overseeing a large staff. Could you share a bit about how you went from a career in the military to an electrical engineer?
Certainly. I earned my degree in electrical engineering at the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario. After graduation, I served 4 years as an infantry officer with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry in Victoria, British Columbia. After leaving the Canadian Armed Forces, I moved to Calgary to hone my skills as an electrical engineer working for multiple engineering, procurement, and construction companies. My longest employment was with Bantrell, where I rose to become the chief electrical engineer with 200 people working for me at the height of the oil and gas boom in 2007.
Wonderful, Doug. Very interesting background, very honorable. And what has hazardous area classification got to do with electrical engineering, and why did it become critical to gain this skill?
All right. The determination of the nature and extent of hazardous areas where an explosive gas or dust atmosphere could exist has always fallen on electrical engineering discipline, as its determination has the greatest impact on electrical due to the inherent dangers caused by arcing and sparking from electrical equipment. I found that the more I investigated this topic during my career, the more I found that there is to learn.
Wonderful, Doug.
The North American standards, such as API 500 and 505, as well as NFPA 497, dealing with explosive atmospheres due to gas or vapors, provide good guidance. However, they do not fully address the issues around how the nature and extent of hazardous areas are determined in the first place. End users typically end up relying on the figures provided in the standards, which do not consider the volatility, temperature, pressures, etc., of the flammable materials. The IEC standard, that's 60079-10-1, provides a first principles-based approach that considers all of these factors as well as wind speed and ventilation rates to arrive at a more first principles-based approach, which I believe provides a better hazardous classification design. This is especially true with indoor scenarios where API and NFPA approaches could lead to less than ideal classifications.
Well, that sounds fascinating, Doug. And we're very honored to have you on board with company EdgeWorks. And EdgeWorks is a national leader in area classification in hazardous locations. During your time with our company, you have been developing an approach on how to deal with flammable liquid pools where there is no containment. Can you please give us a bit of insight into this and how it applies to hazardous area classifications?
Certainly. The present version of IEC 79-10-1, as is true with most standards, is a work in progress. One of the areas that is not properly addressed is how to determine the size of flammable liquid pool releases where there is no containment. In addition, a flammable liquid pool release is an area release as opposed to a point source release, which all other hazardous area classification standards, including IEC 79-10-1, do not address. The pool size equations are based on the simple principle that the maximum theoretical pool size occurs when the pool evaporation rate equals the release rate from a small crack or hole in the piping or of an equipment. The more volatile the flammable mixtures are, the smaller the maximum pool size will be, and vice versa. A feature of this approach is that it is independent of the surface slope and the pool depth, as it only has to consider the pool surface area. I have gone on to consider the permeability of the soil, which is the amount of the surface to soak up the flammable liquids, and therefore reduce the maximum pool size. I also consider operator intervention to again potentially reduce the maximum theoretical pool size. Finally, I consider the pool shape based on the surface slope as well as the area nature of a pool release as it relates to wind direction to determine the final hazardous distance. Unfortunately, these suggested equations will not make it into the next edition of IEC 79-10-1, as there is not enough time in the current review cycle to properly evaluate the proposal. We have prepared an abstract for a paper to be presented at PCIC Europe. That's the Petroleum Chemical Industry Conference. We are presently waiting to hear back from PCIC as to whether our abstract has been accepted so we can finalize a paper for presentation in 2025.
Doug, what is your professional opinion on the EX-HAC hazardous area classification course and software?
I believe that anyone who's involved with the topic of hazardous area classifications should be taking the EX-HAC hazardous area classification course. The course not only looks at the IEC 79-10-1 approach, but at the more traditional and more widely accepted North American API and NFPA approaches to determine hazardous area classification.
Another fantastic insight. And Doug, as area classification software is an innovation, how would its widespread adoption impact the industry?
The EX-HAC software is a worldwide best-in-class software for evaluating hazardous area classification scenarios using the IEC 79-10-1 methodology. I believe it is an essential tool for any firm engaged in preparing hazardous area classification designs.
Oh, thank you, Doug, and wonderful commentary, insight, and background. You certainly led a remarkable life, and thank you for presenting with us.